at House District 41, it really is more of the urban core of Hidalgo County. And so it doesn't contain a lot of rural or colonias. That doesn't come to say that, as a state representative, we're not going to want to drive measures or initiatives that will benefit the entire region, because the other representatives in our region do have primarily colonias or a lot more rural areas. And so I'll start to give a little bit of history on what we've done in the city of McAllen. Even though the city of McAllen really does not have any colonias as well, lighting was a big part of what we saw for the older neighborhoods that didn't get a lot of the updated infrastructure over the years that some of the newer developments or subdivisions got. And so over the last 4 years, we actually completed surveys that specifically showed us every street and every neighborhood in a residential area where there was no lighting within 200 or 250 feet. And in that time frame, over the last 2 years, I think we've probably installed anywhere from really on the low end 200, but upwards of about 300 and 350 lights on residential streets to give these older neighborhoods or some of these areas that don't have the same amenities or infrastructure lighting that they needed. And I think it's a matter of taking care of every neighborhood and every resident in our city. That's the same kind of focus and application that I would take to the state level. We know colonias are in or around many of our cities, and they deserve a lot of the same level of service or infrastructure that the rest of the cities do. Part of that also comes in, for those who aren't aware, is the difference in building restrictions between a municipality or city boundary versus being in the county. And so I think what we see a lot of times is developers taking advantage of areas that don't have the same requirements. And so a lot of times we get these colonias built out that eventually over time, as the cities encroach or build into it or it becomes part of their ETJ, the cities and the taxpayers have to take on a massive burden of rebuilding or adding the infrastructure that's needed, from curb and gutter to sidewalks to lighting. And so I think part of it has to be focused on starting to create standards that even at the county level have to be applied. That way, developers and investors or people that sometimes create these colonias have to provide this for the residents of those areas. I work at a bank, and we've seen a lot of these projects come through, and I know it's highly feasible, and it still keeps the sort of business. Even if they were to do all those amenities or add the infrastructure, I can tell that the businesses themselves would still have a thriving way of doing business, and it would still work. And so, but I think it's incumbent upon the state to also focus on providing funds, grants, or allowing resources for colonias or areas like this to fight for money that is needed, especially the ones that have been there for a very long time. Because you really want to bridge the equity, and it's the equity of transportation, it's the equity of safety, public safety, lighting, and even everything from like broadband internet. You want to make sure that people in the colonias have the tools and the infrastructure so that they could also thrive and improve their lives as well, like the rest of the, let's say, urban communities. Anyone that's wanting and willing and able to get an education in the state of Texas, we should be supportive of that. We have had a tremendous benefit from immigrants or non-citizens being educated and being part of a productive society. Every economic factor or measure will tell you that it's beneficial to the state, it's beneficial to the workforce, it's beneficial to our higher education. And I think stripping away the ability of non-citizens to get in-state tuition is just following the lines of, it's just another tactic that I think our Republican-led government is utilizing for their policy of fear. Everything that we've seen, whether it's the attack on public education or the attack on border communities or the threat against women's health, everything that they're focused on is a policy of fear. They want to make people scared to pursue an education. They want people to fear to go to the supermarket. They want people to fear to go to a doctor. And that's just not the values that guide me. I don't think that even as a Catholic or Christian society, that is something that we should act more like Jesus, not just talk about Jesus. And I think we need to show people dignity, and there's the best pathway to a productive society is education. So why we would have any type of hindrance or encumbrance or hurdle towards higher ed for anyone that is willing and able in our society to get a higher education is just unfathomable to me, and I think it's just a cruel policy. And so I would say yes, we need to look at reversing that, or ensuring that anyone that lives in our state, despite status, can get in-state tuition. There's no reason why they should be able to pay more. If they live in the state, they should be able to pay state tuition. If the federal government has this cruel policy or initiative that they wish to pursue, then they need to do that with their own federal officers. Obviously, whether it's a state government and any law enforcement agency that falls below that, whether it's a state agency, DPS, sheriff's department, rangers, or down to a local police force, those individuals joined those law enforcement agencies to perform the duties that that law enforcement agency is tasked with doing. At being elected and being at the city of McAllen, we have great partnerships between the law enforcement agencies throughout the Rio Grande Valley. This is between all the cities. This is with the sheriff's department, and even with the federal agencies such as FBI, ATF, and we work hand in hand. They've got a command center where all agencies are able to unify and work together, and we also have very good channels of communication. But it's always been in the scope of public safety and ensuring that the citizens and any law-abiding citizen within the city or non-citizen is safe. It's never been utilized for this, like I stated, these policies of fear and to scare people from leaving their home or driving or visit family. It's just again, it's just a cruel tactic. And so, I think any type of interagency cooperation should only be utilized for either, like we always do, for large scale events, for criminal investigations, or for general public safety, that where sort of the borders cross between a local municipality and maybe federal visitation or something like that, where we've got delegations coming down to the region. But outside of that, we've got wonderful law enforcement in the Rio Grande Valley that is, they live down here, they're part of the community, they've grown up on the border community. I think we have a lot of trust in local law enforcement, primarily the local police departments. And I think the sheriff's department has a very strong reputation. And so if we've got federal agencies that are going to come down here and divert our local resources for their needs, it's only going to be detrimental to the current needs that those departments are already trying to fulfill. Law enforcement agencies are very different. Their training is different. The environments and the situations that they deal with are very different. So the notion that even if training is provided, or you come down and you divert personnel towards a different matter, they didn't sign up for that. That is not what they signed up to do. If a CBP officer signed up to be a CBP officer, a local police officer signed up to be a local police officer, a DPS officer wants to do the work of a DPS officer. And I've had conversations with individuals throughout law enforcement, and a lot of them are very uneasy about that type of diversion or sort of forced into a federal role with minimal training. They don't want to be in that confrontational situation with the people, with their own neighbors in their community. It's not what they're looking to do. And so I wholly believe that any type of, whatever the federal policy is, as ugly and horrible as it is today, that is the responsibility of the federal government if they want to enforce it. And it is still the right of the people to protest and let our federal government that we don't agree with their tactics or their policy at the moment. But to pit our own local or even regional law enforcement against its own community, I think is a disastrous erosion of public trust in law enforcement.